Your family doesn't love the real you. They love the version of you they created in their minds. The moment you deviate from that imaginary person, their love wavers, their support falters, and their true feelings surface. They claim they want what's best for you. But what they really want is what's most comfortable for them. Their rejection isn't about your failures. It's about their inability to embrace anything that challenges their narrow vision of who you should be. And while they may insist they're protecting you from bad choices, what they're really protecting is their own fragile egos from the realization that you are a separate, sovereign being whose life belongs to you alone. The phone rings and you feel that familiar knot in your stomach. The call ID shows it's them. Family. Your breath catches, your pulse quickens. Will this conversation leave you feeling valued? Or once again, wondering why the very people who should love you the most seem the least capable of doing so? You're not alone in that feeling. Not by a long shot. The deepest wounds we carry often come from those closest to us, those who share our blood, our name, our history. When a stranger hurts us, we brush it off. When a colleague disappoints us, we move past it. But when family rejects us, that pain cuts to our very core. Why does it hurt so much? Because we believe family should be different. We believe they should see us, understand us, accept us. And when they don't, when instead they criticize, dismiss, or reject who we truly are, it feels like a fundamental betrayal of the natural order of things. But what if I told you that your family's rejection isn't really about you at all? What if their inability to fully accept you is actually a reflection of their own unresolved pain, their own limitations, their own unhealed wounds? And what if the path to your freedom lies not in changing them, not in earning their approval, not in becoming who they want you to be, but in recognizing the profound truth of who you already are? The truth is, we cannot control how others see us, even when those others share our DNA. But we can control how we see ourselves. And that, my friends, makes all the difference. Today, we're going to explore why family rejection happens, why it hurts so deeply, and most importantly, how to find peace and wholeness regardless of whether your family ever fully embraces who you are. Think back to the last time you felt rejected by a family member. Maybe it was a critical comment about your appearance. Perhaps it was dismissal of your life choices or career path. It might have been silence when you needed support or an absence at important moments in your life. How did it make you feel? Small? Unworthy? Like somehow fundamentally you weren't enough? These feelings are universal. They transcend culture, age, background, and circumstance. From the wealthiest mansions to the humblest homes, family rejection speaks the same language of pain. Let me tell you something important. The pain you feel is real. It's valid and it matters. For too long, we've been told to simply forgive and forget. They're family. People say as if sharing DNA grants an unlimited license to wound. They did their best. Others insist as if good intentions erase real harm. But healing doesn't come from denying our pain. It comes from acknowledging it, understanding it, and then, only then, finding a way to move beyond it. So let's start by understanding why families reject. Rejection rarely happens because family members wake up one morning and decide, today I'm going to hurt someone I love. Instead, rejection is usually the outward manifestation of inner pain. Consider this, your parents weren't born parents. Before they had you, they were individuals with their own wounds, their own unmet needs, their own unfulfilled dreams. They were shaped by how their parents treated them, just as their parents were shaped by generations before. When your mother criticizes your parenting, she may be unconsciously trying to justify her own parenting decisions. When your father dismisses your career choice, he may be projecting his own unfulfilled ambitions. When your sibling competes with you, they may be reenacting patterns of seeking parental approval that began in childhood. Family systems are like intricate dances where everyone has learned specific steps, often unconsciously. When you change your steps, when you begin to live authentically, you disrupt the familiar pattern. And that disruption can feel threatening to others in the system. Think about it this way. Imagine a mobile hanging over a crib. When you touch one piece, all the other pieces move in response. Families function similarly. When you change, when you grow, heal, or simply become more authentically yourself, It creates movement throughout the entire system. And not everyone welcomes that movement. Your growth may mirror back to others what they haven't addressed in themselves. Your boundaries may challenge the comfortable roles they've assigned you. Your authenticity may threaten the stories they've told themselves. This doesn't excuse hurtful behavior. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't mean you must accept being hurt. But understanding can be the first step toward compassion, both for them and for yourself. What might be beneath my family member's rejection? What pain might they be carrying? What fears might be driving their behavior? Could your mother's criticism stem from her own insecurity as a parent? Could your father's dismissal reflect his own regrets? Could your siblings' competition reveal their own feelings of inadequacy? When we begin to see rejection not as a statement about our worth, but as a reflection of another's woundedness, we create space for a different kind of healing, one that doesn't depend on their approval. What we experience in our families rarely begins with us. The critical parent was often criticized as a child. The emotionally distant father likely had an emotionally distant father himself. The sibling who competes for attention probably learned early that love and recognition were scarce resources to be fought for. These patterns echo through generations until someone, perhaps you, has the courage to say, "This stops with me." I once worked with a woman who couldn't understand why her mother constantly criticized her parenting. Every visit, every phone call included some subtle, or not so subtle, dig about how she was raising her children. It was only when we explored her mother's own experience that the pattern became clear. My client's grandmother had been harsh and judgmental, constantly telling her daughter, now the critical grandmother, that she was doing everything wrong. Her mother had internalized those messages, believing on some level that good parenting meant pointing out what needed improvement. She was parenting her adult daughter the only way she knew how, the way she had been parented. Understanding this didn't immediately change her mother's behavior, but it changed how my client received it. Rather than taking each criticism as a personal attack, she began to see it as the continuation of a generational pattern. And in that recognition came the possibility of breaking the cycle. I may not be able to change how my mother speaks to me, she told me, but I can change how I speak to my own children. This is the power of awareness. When we recognize the patterns that have shaped us, we gain the freedom to choose differently. We can honor the good our families gave us while consciously leaving behind what caused harm. But this awareness usually comes with grief. There's grief in recognizing that our parents were wounded people doing their best with limited emotional tools. There's grief in acknowledging that they may never be able to give us what we needed and still need. There's grief in accepting that the fantasy of the perfectly loving, perfectly supportive family may never match our reality. Allow yourself to feel this grief. It's a necessary part of the healing process. Only by mourning what wasn't can we fully appreciate what is and what could be. What patterns do I see repeating in my family? How have these patterns affected me? Which ones am I willing to consciously break? Family rejection takes many forms, but most fall into 4 categories: dismissal, control, and abandonment. Understanding which form of rejection you've experienced can help illuminate your path to healing. Criticism says you're not good enough as you are. It's the parent who focuses on the rather than the 4 as on your report card. It's the relative who comments on your weight at every family gathering. It's the constant message that you need to improve to be worthy of love. Dismissal says your feelings, experiences, and perspectives don't matter. It's the parent who tells you to stop being so sensitive when you express hurt. It's the family that changes the subject when you bring up something important to you. It's the denial of your lived reality in favor of the family narrative. Control says we know better than you what's best for your life. It's the parent who pressures you to follow their chosen career path. It's the family that uses guilt or financial leverage to influence your decisions. It's the message that your autonomy is less important than family expectations. Abandonment says our love is conditional on you meeting certain requirements. It's the parent who withdraws affection when you disappoint them. It's the family that distances themselves when you make choices they disagree with. It's the threat, spoken or unspoken, that you can be cut off if you don't conform. Which of these resonates with you? Perhaps you've experienced more than one. Perhaps they've manifested in subtle ways rather than obvious ones. But naming the specific type of rejection you faced is an important step in addressing its impact. Because each type of rejection implants specific false beliefs about ourselves that we then carry into other relationships. Criticism leads us to believe we're fundamentally flawed. Dismissal teaches us our feelings and experiences don't matter. Control convinces us we can't trust our own judgment. Abandonment instills the fear that love is always conditional and can be withdrawn at any moment. These beliefs don't just affect our family relationships. They color every interaction, every opportunity, every possibility in our lives. They become the invisible script running in the background of our consciousness, influencing choices we may not even realize we're making. The good news? Once we identify these scripts, we can begin to rewrite them. When family hurts us, our first instinct is often to react from our wounded place. We might lash out in anger, withdraw and hurt, or redouble our efforts to earn approval. But these reactions keep us trapped in the same dysfunctional patterns. True freedom comes when we learn to respond rather than react, when we make conscious choices based on our values rather than unconscious ones based on our wounds. This shift from reaction to response doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice, one that begins with awareness and develops through consistent attention to our patterns. Notice what happens in your body when family rejection occurs. Does your chest tighten? Does your breath become shallow? Does your stomach knot? These physical sensations are important signals alerting you that you've been triggered. When you notice these signals, pause, take a breath. Create space between the trigger and your response. In that space lies your power, the power to choose how you engage. What am I feeling right now? What old wound has been activated? What do I need in this moment? Sometimes what you need is to set a boundary. I'm not willing to discuss my weight at family gatherings. I need to end this conversation if the criticism continues. I love you, but I won't let you speak to me that way. Setting boundaries isn't about controlling others. It's about taking responsibility for your own well-being. It's about clarifying what you will and won't accept in your relationships. Other times, what you need is simply to disengage, not as a punishment to them, but as protection for yourself. This might mean leaving a difficult conversation, limiting time with certain family members, or in extreme cases, taking a temporary or permanent break from the relationship. Disengagement isn't failure. Sometimes it's the most self-respecting choice available, but perhaps the most powerful response is compassionate detachment. The ability to remain connected to your own truth while recognizing that others are entitled to their perspectives, even when those perspectives hurt. Compassionate detachment says, I see that you believe what you're saying. I understand it comes from your experience, and I choose to hold a different truth for myself. This stance neither concedes your reality nor attacks theirs. It acknowledges the gulf between your perspectives without needing to bridge it through argument or acquiescence. Practicing compassionate detachment doesn't mean the rejection stops hurting, but it does mean the rejection stops defining you. And that's where true freedom begins. At the heart of family rejections, pain, lies a fundamental human desire to be seen, accepted, and valued by those closest to us. When that desire goes unfulfilled, many of us embark on a lifelong quest for approval, not just from family, but from everyone we encounter. We become shapeshifters, chameleons, constantly adjusting our colors to blend with our surroundings. We monitor others' reactions, scanning for signs of disapproval. We edit our words, our choices, our very selves in the hope of finally earning the acceptance we crave. But this approval-seeking behavior comes at a devastating cost: disconnection from our authentic selves. Every time we choose others' approval over our inner truth, we reinforce the belief that our worth depends on external validation. We train ourselves to look outward rather than inward for guidance. We become strangers to ourselves. The path to healing lies in reclaiming your intrinsic worth, the value you possess simply by virtue of existing. This worth isn't earned through achievement. It isn't granted by others' approval. It isn't contingent on looking a certain way, making a certain amount of money, or following a particular life path. Your worth is inherent, unchangeable. complete. Embracing this truth doesn't happen through intellectual understanding alone. It requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to yourself, a shift from conditional to unconditional self-regard. Begin by noticing the conditions you've placed on your own worthiness. Do you believe you'll be worthy when you lose weight? When you get that promotion? When you find a partner? When your family finally approves of your choices? These conditions were likely implanted early in your life, but you continue to enforce them every time you withhold self-acceptance until certain criteria are met. What would it feel like to remove these conditions? To declare yourself worthy exactly as you are right now, regardless of external circumstances or others' opinions? This isn't about ignoring areas for growth or abandoning your aspirations. It's about separating your fundamental worth from your evolving life journey. You are worthy now, and you can continue to grow. You are complete as you are, and you can still evolve. You are inherently valuable, and you can still pursue your dreams. This perspective creates a secure internal foundation, one that remains stable regardless of others' reactions to you. From this foundation, family rejection may still hurt, but it no longer threatens your sense of self. Practice speaking to yourself with the same compassion you would offer a beloved friend. When self-criticism arises, ask, would I say this to someone I love? If not, find gentler words for yourself. Notice when you seek external validation and gently redirect your attention inward. Ask yourself, what do I think? What do I know to be true for me? Celebrate the moments when you honor your authenticity, especially when doing so risks disapproval. Each such moment strengthens your connection to your intrinsic worth. Your family's inability to fully see and accept you isn't evidence of your unworthiness. It's evidence of their limitations that belong to them, not you. One of life's most liberating discoveries is that family isn't limited to those who share our DNA. Family can also be those who share our values, support our growth, and celebrate our authentic selves. These chosen family members might be friends, mentors, partners, or even certain biological relatives who've earned a place in our inner circle through their consistent love and respect. Unlike relationships based solely on biology, chosen family relationships are founded on mutual choice. Both parties actively decide to be in each other's lives. Both contribute to creating the relationship they desire. This foundation of choice creates space for authenticity that may be missing in biological family relationships. When someone chooses to be in your life, not out of obligation, but out of genuine appreciation for who you are, you can relax into being yourself more fully. Building a chosen family begins with clarity about what you need in relationships. What qualities matter most to you? Honesty, empathy, shared interests, similar values, the ability to respect difference. Once you've identified these qualities, pay attention to the people who already embody them in your life. Who makes you feel seen? Who celebrates your successes without jealousy? Who offers support without judgment when you're struggling? Nurture these relationships intentionally. Express appreciation. Make time. Be vulnerable. Show up consistently, not just when you need something. At the same time, be willing to let go of relationships that consistently diminish rather than enhance your life, even long-standing ones. Not every friendship deserves a lifetime commitment. Not every person who was important to you in the past needs to remain central to your future. Creating boundaries with toxic individuals isn't selfish. It's self-preserving, and it creates space for healthier connections to flourish. As your chosen family grows, you'll likely notice something remarkable. The desperate need for approval from your biological family begins to diminish, not because you've stopped loving them, but because your need for belonging is being met elsewhere. This emotional diversification is profoundly liberating. When your sense of connection no longer depends entirely on one source, the power of any single rejection decreases dramatically. Of course, chosen family isn't a perfect substitute for healing the wounds of biological family rejection. That healing is still important work, but having a supportive community can provide the emotional safety net that makes confronting those wounds possible. Your chosen family becomes the secure base from which you can explore the painful terrain of your past without getting lost in it. They remind you of who you truly are when old doubts resurface. They help you distinguish between helpful feedback and echoes of familial criticism. And perhaps most importantly, they demonstrate through their consistent presence that you are indeed worthy of being loved exactly as you are. There's a question that haunts many who've experienced family rejection. Why did this happen to me? Sometimes this question leads us down a path of self-blame. We convince ourselves that if only we were different, better, smarter, more successful, less sensitive, the rejection wouldn't have occurred. Other times, the question traps us in bitterness. We replay the hurts, rehearse the arguments we never got to make, imagine the apologies we never received. We become defined by what was done to us rather than by what we choose to do now. But what if we approach this question differently? What if instead of asking why this happened to us, we asked what this experience enables us to offer the world? Every wound, when healed, becomes a unique source of wisdom and compassion. Your particular experience of rejection has taught you things that cannot be learned any other way. Perhaps you've developed exceptional emotional intelligence, the ability to read others' feelings and respond with sensitivity. Perhaps you've cultivated resilience, the capacity to withstand difficulty and continue forward. Perhaps you've honed your empathy, the power to truly understand others' pain because you've inhabited your own. These qualities born from your hardship are gifts the world desperately needs. I've seen this transformation countless times. The woman rejected for her sensitivity becomes the teacher who notices the quiet student others overlook. The man criticized for his creativity becomes the mentor who nurtures unconventional talent. The adult child of emotionally unavailable parents becomes the friend who shows up consistently for others in pain. This doesn't mean the rejection was somehow worth it or that those who hurt you did you a favor. Pain isn't the only path to growth, and acknowledging the gifts that came from your experience doesn't minimize its cost. But it does mean that your pain need not have the final word in your story. When we find purpose in our pain, when we use what we've learned to ease others' suffering, we participate in a profound form of alchemy. We transform lead into gold. We convert what could have destroyed us into what now defines our contribution. This transformation often begins small. Perhaps you simply listen with real presence when a friend shares their own experience of rejection. Perhaps you speak up when you witness someone else being dismissed. Perhaps you create something, art, music, writing, a business that expresses what you've learned through your journey. Over time, these small acts compound. The wisdom you share touches one life, which touches another, which touches another still. The ripples of your healed wound extend far beyond what you can see. And something remarkable happens along the way. As you use your experience to serve others, your relationship to that experience changes. What once felt like only a source of pain becomes also a source of meaning, connection, and even gratitude. This shift doesn't erase the hurt, but it does place that hurt within a larger context, one where your suffering connects you to the universal human experience rather than isolating you. Few topics are more misunderstood than forgiveness. For many who've experienced family rejection, the very suggestion of forgiving those who've hurt them feels like another betrayal, this time of themselves. Why should I forgive when they haven't apologized? Doesn't forgiveness mean what they did was okay? Won't forgiving just open me up to being hurt again? These concerns reflect common misconceptions about what forgiveness is and isn't. Forgiveness isn't reconciliation. You can forgive someone without resuming a relationship with them. Forgiveness doesn't require their participation, their awareness, or even their continued existence. Forgiveness isn't approval. You can forgive an action while still believing it was wrong. In fact, if you didn't believe the action was wrong, there would be nothing to forgive. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. You can forgive while still remembering what happened clearly and still taking appropriate measures to protect yourself from similar harm in the future. So what is forgiveness? At its essence, forgiveness is releasing the expectation that the past could or should have been different. It's acknowledging that what happened, and that continuing to rage against that reality only prolongs your suffering. It's choosing to stop drinking the poison of resentment while hoping the other person will die. This understanding of forgiveness places the power back in your hands. You're not waiting for an apology that may never come. You're not dependent on the other person changing or even acknowledging the hurt they caused. You're simply deciding that you no longer want this pain to control your life. Forgiveness is rarely a one-time event. More often, it's a process, sometimes a lengthy one, with both progress and setbacks along the way. You might forgive today, only to find anger resurging tomorrow when a memory is triggered. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human. The journey toward forgiveness often includes several stages. First comes acknowledgement, allowing yourself to fully recognize what happened and how it affected you. This means neither minimizing the hurt, it wasn't that bad, nor catastrophizing it, my life is ruined forever. It means seeing the reality clearly, with eyes wide open. Next comes understanding, not to excuse the behavior, but to place it in context. This is where you consider the family patterns, generational wounds, and personal limitations that contributed to the rejection you experienced. Then comes grief, mourning what was lost, what never was, what should have been. This grief must be fully felt, not rushed through or bypassed. It's a necessary honoring of the impact on your life. And finally comes release, the gradual loosening of resentment's grip on your heart. This release doesn't happen through force of will. It emerges naturally as you move through the earlier stages with patience and self-compassion. Throughout this process, remember that forgiveness is something you do for yourself, not for the person who hurt you. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. And you practice forgiveness not all at once, but moment by moment, choice by choice, breath by each time you notice yourself caught in resentment. Gently redirect your attention to the present moment, to what's good in your life now, to what's possible for your future. Not as a way of bypassing your feelings, but as a way of placing them in a wider perspective. As you practice this redirection, you'll gradually find yourself spending less time dwelling in past hurts and more time engaged with current possibilities. The rejection that once seemed to define your story becomes just one chapter in a much longer, richer narrative. Throughout human history, we've defined family primarily through blood ties and legal bonds. We're taught that family is who you're born to, who shares your DNA, who bears your surname. But what if we expanded our definition? What if family isn't who gave birth to you, but who helps bring forth your authentic self? What if family isn't who shares your genetics, but who shares your journey? This expanded understanding doesn't devalue biological connections when they're healthy. It simply recognizes that the essence of family transcends biology. At its core, family is about belonging, acceptance, support, and love. When these qualities are present, biology is a beautiful bond. When they're absent, biology alone cannot create what matters most in human relationships. By embracing this wider definition, you free yourself from the belief that there's only one path to experiencing family love. You recognize that meaningful connection can come through many channels, all equally valid, all equally capable of nurturing yourself. This perspective doesn't ask you to stop longing for healthier relationships with your biological family, if that's what your heart desires. But it does invite you to stop waiting for those relationships to transform before you allow yourself to experience the sense of belonging you deserve. The truth is, some biological family relationships do heal over time. People grow, gain insight, develop new skills. The parent who couldn't accept your sexuality when you were 20 might embrace your partner when you're 40. The sibling who competed relentlessly in childhood might become a supportive ally in adulthood. These transformations are possible, and when they happen, they're worth celebrating. But they're not guaranteed, and your well-being cannot depend on them occurring. What is guaranteed is your ability to create meaning, connection, and family of choice, regardless of what your biological family does or doesn't provide. This creation isn't a consolation prize. It's a profound act of self-determination and hope. Every time you build a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation, you're redefining family. Every time you choose to see someone for who they truly are, rather than who you need them to be, you're redefining family. Every time you offer acceptance that doesn't depend on conformity, you're redefining family. And in doing so, you're not just healing your own wounds. You're helping to create a world where fewer such wounds occur. You're establishing new patterns that can echo through future generations just as surely as the old patterns of rejection did. Healing from family rejection isn't a destination you reach once and for all. It's an ongoing journey with moments of breakthrough and moments of setback, periods of clarity and periods of confusion. There will be days when you feel completely liberated from old pain, capable of engaging with family members from a place of compassionate detachment. And there will be days when a single comment sends you spiraling back into familiar hurt, when old patterns reassert themselves despite your best intentions. This rhythm of progress and regression is normal. It doesn't mean you're failing or that your healing isn't real. It means you're human, navigating a complex emotional landscape with the tools available to you in each moment. The key is not perfect consistency, but compassionate awareness. Can you notice when you've been triggered without judgment? Can you gently guide yourself back to your center when you've been knocked off balance? Can you honor both? How far you've come and how far you still want to go. This compassionate awareness extends to your family members as well. As you continue your healing journey, you may notice shifts in how you perceive them. Perhaps you begin to see the frightened child beneath your father's criticism. Perhaps you recognize your mother's controlling behavior as a desperate attempt to feel safe in an uncertain world. Perhaps you understand your siblings' distance as self-protection rather than rejection. These insights don't excuse harmful behavior, but they do allow you to hold a more nuanced view, one that acknowledges both the hurt you experienced and the complicated humanity of those who caused it. Over time, this nuanced perspective can transform your relationship with your family's rejection. What once felt like a reflection of your worthiness comes to be seen as a reflection of a complex system of intergenerational patterns, unhealed wounds, limited emotional tools, and unmet needs. And in that transformation lies tremendous freedom. The freedom to define yourself beyond the story of rejection, the freedom to create relationships based on choice rather than obligation, the freedom to offer others the acceptance you yourself may still be seeking. This freedom doesn't depend on forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It doesn't require minimizing the impact or making excuses for those who wounded you. It simply involves holding your experience in a wider context, one that includes not just what was taken from you, but what you've created despite that loss. Because ultimately, the most powerful response to rejection isn't to prove the rejector's wrong. It's to live so authentically, so compassionately, so fully that their rejection becomes irrelevant to your sense of self. Not because you don't care about their love. You may always care, and that's entirely human. But because you've discovered a truth they couldn't show you, that you are inherently worthy, that your voice matters, that your existence is a gift to this world exactly as you are. That truth was always yours. It was yours before the rejection began. It remained yours throughout every painful episode, and it will be yours long after the echoes of those old wounds have faded. Hold fast to that truth. Let it guide you forward. And know that in your journey toward healing, you're never truly alone. Countless others walk a similar path, reaching toward the same light. In our shared humanity, in our common longing for acceptance, in our universal need for love, we find perhaps the deepest family of all.